Hello, this is Ashley Naylor from the rock band Even and other assorted goodies, and you are on Fox on the Wire.
You're listening to Fox on the Wire podcast.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready, mate.
Let's go. Okay. Ash Naylor, welcome to Fox on the Wire.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's good to be here.
Absolutely stoked to get you on the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's nice to finally make it.
And welcome to the new podcasting room I've set up here / music room.
Mate, it's a dream. When do I move in is what I say.
Anytime you like. It's still a work in progress, but I think we're getting there, and hopefully it's going to inspire some good conversations.
Absolutely,
as
mate.
we do more. So, yeah, how have you been?
Been good, thanks. Yeah,
good.
just easing into, work life, whatever that definition entails. Yeah.
So last October you released a solo album called Soundtracks Volume 1. Will there be a Volume 2?
There will.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing. Yeah, I snuck it out in October last year, I think on Hendrix's anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there will be. I just had to sort of scratch that itch, just get a whole bunch of stuff out into the open because it's been sitting at home for some of it for a couple of years, and other things were fresh from last year during the enforced layoff.
Yeah. So the songs you had on this album, were they sort of ones that you had almost lying around that you'd sort of written sort of over the years that you sort of never got around to recording?
Yeah.
Or were they all brand new songs that you wrote last year?
No, it's probably 70-30, 70% new, 30% old.
Yeah.
And then, as you can probably relate to, being a musician and a songwriter, some songs don't require vocals or melodies over the top. I find some pieces of music are just fine the way they are.
Yeah. Is that easy for you to make that decision? Like, does it sort of speak for itself as you're recording it or writing it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need lyrics on this?
Yeah, sometimes I think the more I play, I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but the more I play, the more satisfaction I get out of just creating a piece of music. I don't know if you have this issue, but when I put vocals on things, sometimes I feel like I'm not diluting the process. Sometimes you're enhancing a piece of music with lyrics and melodies, but sometimes I feel like it distracts me sometimes as a listener from a particular piece of music. So the pure indulgence of doing an instrumental record, it was just so liberating just having a bunch of songs that essentially cost nothing to record and putting them out into the open for not any major sort of narcissistic kind of motive to have praise heaped upon me or anything. It was more like, you have music, you want to get it out. And I think the nature of the songs, I felt like they were worthy of being aired. I mean, because what makes something worthy, I think once you record something you like, just put it out.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of pieces of music that you might write, even if it's not a full song, that never actually make it to the recording process. They sort of just end up on a voice recording on your phone or in a notebook and never sort of go any further than that, I guess.
That's right. And one of the songs on that soundtrack is a voice the song called Indian Bells. It's an acoustic riff I did on the phone. And probably like yourself, I got a library full of tunes on the phone, and I actually wrote them down a few months ago. I got a pen out, pen and paper, and went through all my phone ideas. I was like, hang on a sec, there's 35, half-baked ideas here. So some of them do have another life. I guess I treat the phone like I used to treat a dictaphone or a Walkman back in the day. But sometimes I don't have the time or energy to review things and pick through them.
Yeah. Some stage.
Yeah.
But you got to document it somewhere. easily forgetful, you know, even if it's the next morning and I'm like, oh, what did I write last night? I'll forget. So I've got to record it, otherwise I forget.
Well, I think Keith had the same thing with Satisfaction, didn't he? Wasn't it a bedside table? He had a tape recorder on the bedside table.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of riff you want to get down.
Yeah. Lucky he did that.
Yeah, I think we're all benefiting from that. But like, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. If a song's worthy enough, you'll remember it. I think the Beatles had that philosophy that if it was good, John and Paul would remember the song the next day, you know, if they thought it was worthy of remembering. Yeah, look, it's almost like a clearing of the decks as well, like having all this stuff that I've amassed, all this material during, as I said before, that enforced layoff last year. It's put me into a different mode. I was back into recording mode and just writing tunes all the time, and I can write tunes till my head explodes, you know. Yeah. Writing songs is the hard part. Writing tunes is easy for me.
So do you sort of not struggle more, but like find it a bit harder to write lyrics than music?
I do. It takes longer for me, and at the moment I'm trying to be a bit freer with myself about it, and not force myself to write lyrics. I mean, the last album I had some songs I'd written the lyrics for 3 times before I settled on a set of lyrics that were acceptable to me. Yeah,
I think the longer you go along, you know, the more years you're writing songs, the harder it is to settle on lyrics that you write. I'm finding that now.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more aware of that they're going to end up on a recording and people might actually be listening to what I'm sort of singing. So I'm a little bit more self-conscious these days.
It's good to try and balance being self-conscious with also being free within yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you agonise, I think, too much over certain aspects of the process, that might sound agonised, you know?
Yeah.
If that you know what I mean? Like lyric writing is difficult. I don't have a high opinion of myself as a lyricist, but I like lyrics to fit within a piece of music. I don't necessarily feel like, say with Even, I don't feel like the band's music is a launch pad for my lyrics and melodies. I feel like the lyrics and melodies are part of the whole picture. So I'm not motivated by writing lyrics and vocal melodies. I find it's just a part of what I do when I'm making a song. But I can relate to the idea of, you know, being not fussy, but particular about how you phrase something or what you're saying, or how overt you want to be about something, or how guarded you want to be about something, you know?
Yeah, because, I mean, they are pretty revealing. You know, writing lyrics is pretty revealing, but, I find it almost frustrating at times trying to make yourself sort of feel okay with them. Yeah. You get sick of it. By the time you finish it, you're kind of almost sick of it and sick of the process of. So, yes, I guess it's that fine line of trying to not force it, but somehow you still got to, you know, work your way through the process and be happy with the end result without being frustrated by it.
And also, I think in music, I'm not sure what your own expectations are of your own material, but my expectations of my own lyrics aren't unrealistic. I think I have an idea of what I'm capable of, but, you know, I'm not trying to beat someone else at their game, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to refine my approach. And I think that's probably the thing that I'm trying to do in this phase of, you know, songwriting, is it's like distilling it down to what I think is good music. I'm not trying to have some kind of pretentious aspiration of being a great lyricist or a great storyteller. You know, I'll leave that to the experts.
Yeah, you just do your own thing.
Yeah, and I think everyone, if they just do their thing, everything else kind of falls into place. I think Ray Davies said, if you write with honesty, if you write sincerely and with honesty, the end product will be good.
Yeah, and I think that will last longer, like as in terms of a career, which is probably why you've had such a long and successful career, is because you've done your own thing. You haven't tried to, you know, maybe match someone else or keep up with someone else or trends or anything like that. You're just kind of doing your own thing.
Yeah, I mean, it has its pitfalls as well, but yeah, well, I think that's the key. Like, look at Anton Newcombe from the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Like, he is essentially an industry of one, you know, or Kevin Parker from Tame Impala, or PJ Harvey, or someone who's got this idea of what they want to do, and they do it, and they're unflinching. They don't bow to the industry, and I think that's, you know, I've had my moments in the past where I've been seduced by the industry and the expectations placed upon myself or the band that I'm in. At the time when we were creating a bit of a buzz in the late 90s, you get a little bit intoxicated by that, and you sort of perhaps momentarily forget why you're making music. Whereas now at this point in time, I feel like the making of the music is its own reward.
Yeah.
But I've also been lucky to have played in some very well-established bands like Paul Kelly Band and Rock Wiz and the Stems and that kind of thing, which has afforded me the luxury of having a musical lifestyle, but also having time away to do my own stuff.
Yeah, flipping between different projects and keeping everything fresh, I guess.
And learning by osmosis. Like, I've learned a lot playing in Paul's band. I've learned a lot about an optimum environment for a band to make its best music, to make its best music within.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm 51 now, and I still feel as excited about making music as I did when I was 25.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I mean, your audience has shrunk, but the passion is still there, you know?
I guess COVID, the lockdown time aside, are you sort of busier than you have been in any other point in your career? Like going between all these different projects?
Yeah, prior to 2020, I was probably at a peak business.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it might have just been instilled in me as a kid to not be afraid of working.
Yeah.
Although it's a little bit of a conundrum because I don't always equate being a musician with working, because it's a different kind of headspace, like compared to doing a job you don't like. The work element comes in with being prepared for each gig that you take on. You've got to make sure that you're mentally and physically prepared for what the gig requires. So short answer is, I think up until 2020 I was as busy as I've ever been, but probably more mentally equipped now to deal with that busyness.
Okay, yeah. So going back to your Soundtracks Volume 1 album, did you record that at home?
Yeah, everything except for one track was recorded at home. The opening track was done at a friend's studio in London.
Oh, right.
On a day off in 2014. I was over there for a week or so. And we just went in one night and I did the whole Lenny Kravitz thing, just whacked down the drums, bass, guitar, and pretended I was in Crosby, Stills and Nash for a few minutes. Pretended I was Stephen Stills for 5 or 6 minutes. And then the rest of the stuff I did at home, very rudimentary recording. Like, I'm not hi-fi, I'm not a high-tech recording engineer. I just, if it's a clean signal, it doesn't distort, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
So everything on there, with the exclusion of a couple of drum loops which were recorded years ago, actually. There's a couple of Matt Cotter drum loops, Matt from Even. There's a couple of drum loops I found off a session we did, I think in 2011.
Oh, yeah.
And I sought Matt's approval before I...
Of course.
Yeah, I said, Matt, are you okay if I use this? Because, Matt is such a great drummer. He's just, 8 bars of Matt Cotter is like gold,
Yeah.
So there's a song, the second track, I think it's Free the Air. That's Matt on a drum loop. I was secretly hoping he would approve of me using it.
Yeah.
And there's another song down the end, Festival Jam, which is just Matt just playing to a track we did around the same period, and I just put a new guitar on there and some bass, and yeah. So oh, sorry, I've gone off the track. Yeah. Oh, it was all recorded at home. Everything I did except the opening track was done at home.
So the opening track was Weeping Johnny.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about the wah sound you've got on that.
Okay.
I guess it sounded very much like a Hendrix sort of wah sound.
Yeah.
Did it change through the song? Like at the start of the song, I really picked up on it, but then I'm like, more I listen to it, I'm like, it's a bit sort of Jimmy Page too, maybe. Or
well, those two are my beacons. Like Hendrix and Page for me, when it comes to wah, are the absolute apex of that style of music. And I used whatever was at my disposal. I'm sure I think it was a Jim Dunlop Crybaby.
Yeah.
Don't think it was a Vox wah, but I guess doing instrumental stuff and doing. There you go.
When I listen to it, I'm like, should pull out the old Jimi Hendrix wah. I think I got this when I was like maybe 12 for Christmas.
Man, what a great present! I remember when I first tried a wah, it was like your world suddenly goes from black and white into Technicolor.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it.
I don't think, apart from Hendrix and Jimmy Page, I don't think I've had any other major influences with regards to why I would ever pick up a wah pedal. But those two guitar players pretty much were the soundtrack of my teenagehood. Yeah. Yeah, so I think it was probably one of these guys, like a Dunlop or a Crybaby kind of.
Yeah.
But I getting back to the instrumental thing, the freedom that I just love the freedom of making instrumental music. I didn't feel like that could have turned into a song, but it's almost sometimes like it's like you're shoehorning something that doesn't fit on occasions, trying to squeeze these lyrics into a piece of music. Sometimes it just doesn't fly.
It probably gave you more freedom with the music that you didn't have to try and, fit vocals around it or vice versa.
Absolutely.
There was another track, Handgun Blues, which is basically a 7.5 minute guitar solo.
It is.
No backing music or anything.
No, that I was listening to so much Hendrix during that period of time. For me, listening to Hendrix during 2020 was like just having musical medicine. Like you might recall my 50th in March last year, 2020.
Yep.
All right, a mate of mine, Pat, gave me a box set of the Fillmore concerts, 69/70, of Band of Gypsies.
All right.
So all 5, I think it's 5 shows over 3 days or 2 days? 3 days. So all the shows that he did that weekend are now on a box set. Wow. So I had a pretty intense Band of Gypsies listening party with myself.
Yeah.
And it really came out in things like Handgun Blues, because Handgun Blues, like you said, it's essentially a 7 or 8 minute guitar solo, but it has form. To me, it has form. Kind of a loose structure, but it also tests the patience of anyone who might be listening to it, because it's the kind of thing you could have 30 seconds of it and you get the gist of it, or 8 minutes of and you get the gist of it. But that's the beauty and freedom of making instrumental music. Isn't just no limits.
Yeah.
And another influence for that one was Maggot Brain by Funkadelic.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an opening track on their album of the same title, and Eddie Hazel essentially plays a guitar solo for the whole song.
Yeah.
So there's a light rhythm holding it together, and then Eddie Hazel's playing Hendrix style lead over this whole track. And if anyone who tunes into your podcast is curious at all, I think for me Eddie Hazel was kind of like the successor to Hendrix, because the early Funkadelic and Parliament records with him playing lead on it are just absolutely mind blowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he's the guitar playing on Standing on the Verge of Getting It On by Funkadelic is up there for me with some of the best electric guitar ever recorded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check that out.
I'm a fussy old fuss pot.
Yeah. Is it crazy to you that Hendrix did so much, and he was only 27 when he died.
Yeah.
Like, there's a few people like that, obviously, in the 27 Club, and even Tupac in the rap thing, he was like 25, I think.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it?
And they just did so much up until that point that's still lasting through these generations. That just blows me away, I guess.
It does blow me away. And
Yeah.
in my 20s, I used to be very hung up on my my age. I used to sort of think, oh, I'm too old. I can't. There's no way I could possibly write a good song. I'm 26 or 27. You know,
Yeah.
like, and to think that Hendrix had done everything that he did up until that point, and you know, who knows what could have come after. But well, you know, on a similar note, look at Steve Merritt from Small Faces. He left the Small Faces when he was 21, so he'd already been in the Small Faces for since 1965.
Yeah.
And by 1969, that's it. You know, I'm going to form another band with Peter Frampton. I'll form Humble Pie. A bit like Paul Weller from Style Council. Like when he left Style Council, I think when he left the Jam, when he split his band up at the peak of its success, he was like 23 or something.
Right.
Yeah, it does astound me that people like Jimi Hendrix can do what they do, being so young. But you know, you don't need me to tell anyone how much of an anomaly he is in every aspect. And just a once in a generation musician.
Yeah. And he still rates, you know, in all the guitar world polls and top guitarists of all time, still number one. And you know, that will probably never change. Yeah,
well, I mean, you know, you can't. How can you dispute it? I mean, it's not to everyone's taste.
Yeah.
But as a budding guitarist myself, every time you pick up a guitar, you think, how can I make it sound better? And you know, Hendrix had the finesse, but he also had this wild, raw side, which is as much a part of his thing as his finesse and skill. Yeah. You know, like he's a very skilled guitarist. Yeah. But he also had this sense of abandon, which you can't force that. You know?
Did he make you want to play left-handed?
No, he just made me want to play better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I obviously grew up with Nirvana, and there was a point there when I was sort of first starting to learn guitar. You know, I'd sort of learnt the basics, and I really wanted to play left-handed, so I tried that. And I figured, you know, I've learnt the technique on this side. Maybe I can just switch it over and do it.
How'd you go?
No, I'm not real good.
Yeah.
So I'm still a right-handed guitarist, but that's fine.
No shame in that. But yeah, Kurt, well, there you go. Like he's another brilliant guitar player for different reasons. Yeah. You know, like how could you think of a chord progression like Lithium or something? Like who thinks of that? You know what I mean? Like no one. He's another one. Once in a generation kind of artist, you know?
And it's pure art, really, isn't it? It's not just songwriting, and it's more art. Like what he could do with the things that he was writing and the way he painted his lyrics and his performances. Not anyone can just do that. No,
well, he's another anomaly, you know, for a multitude of reasons. And you know, I was and am a massive Nirvana fan. Like, you know, they just. I actually saw them when they came out, and it's like, you know, it was just beautiful. Yeah, you know, like it was powerful and it was exciting, and you could sense, you know, you can feel the change. You know, you can feel the change in everything. Like coming out of the 80s into the 90s. You know, it was I guess it was probably a gradual transition to a certain extent culturally, but Nirvana they fast-tracked this change. Okay, well, I think it gave people a lot of freedom. Right. Just to be themselves. Yeah. You know, you see a guy up there with Converse and a cardigan with a Fender Mustang screaming at the top of his lungs, but making this beautiful racket. It was very liberating. In a small or relatively small place? Yeah, I saw him at the Palace. Yeah. Palace. So what year was that? Was that 91? 92. Yeah. So did you feel that
sort of shift in music as it was happening, like from, I guess, to keep it simple, from the 80s sort of glam thing to the grunge sort of movement? Did you feel that as it was happening?
Yeah.
Because you lived right through it.
Absolutely.
So.
I had a bit of a concurrent experience there, because the band that I was in the 80s, The Swarm, was a very English-influenced band and very influenced by the Smiths and the Cure and Susie and the Banshees and Joy Division.
Yeah.
So the glam rock thing, it was running parallel to what I was into, and I was into the Stone Roses, and when other mates of mine were into Mudhoney and that kind of stuff, I was into the Roses, and they sort of managed to transition through the late 80s, early 90s relatively unscathed, apart from the fact they split in 96 for the first time. But Nirvana just changed. It's hard to sort of overstate the impact they had, really.
Not to take any credit away from them, obviously, because they're one of my favourite bands, but did they get too much credit for that whole change? Like, obviously it wasn't just them.
No, you're right. There was a bunch of bands.
Or is it more that other bands maybe don't get enough credit, like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains?
Well, I think those bands you mentioned got recognition for their artistry, but I think given that Nirvana was such a freakish anomaly, I don't think in any of the attention or credit Nirvana got was. I don't think it was over the top. I think it was justified, because I mean, from a songwriting perspective, no one before or since has written songs like Kurt Cobain. I mean, he openly confessed to being a massive Pixies fan, which is pretty obvious in some ways, but you could go so far as to say that Frank Black, no one could write songs like that guy. Not to diminish the songwriting of, Lane Staley and Chris Cornell and their bandmates, Jerry Cantrell and those guys, who are really very talented songwriters in their own right. But I think there was just something so different about Nirvana. Although they're a heavy rock band, they were quite different. Yeah. They did stick out from that mob.
So it really was that sort of special at that, or they were that special at that time. You really noticed it. Yeah, because they were more than just they weren't even a grunge band, that tag doesn't even apply to them. They're just to me, they're just like a classic rock band with so many different elements, like that. They had like a punk element, a kind of hard rock element, but also a pop element as well. Oh, big time, yeah. And you put all those together in that sort of magical mix of what they had. And the thing is, it's like talking about the Beatles. It's been overstated and talked about so much. But having seen them live and buying their records when they came out, it was exciting. Yeah. Yeah, I always like to talk to people who lived through it and noticed it at the time, because I was only about 8 or 9, sort of in the early 90s, so I wasn't into it at the time. It was more sort of just after Kurt died, I think, that I got into it. So I was looking back and I was reading back, and it was always, but I always like to talk to people who actually lived through it and noticed it at the time. Yeah. To get like a proper perspective. So, well, it's interesting. It's like it reset me, because I grew up on 70s rock, the Kiss and Sweet, Skyhooks and ABBA and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Then I got into my whole 80s trip, but the Nirvana thing kind of was like a reset. And I bought my first Marshall, I think, in 93 from Troy Music down in Ringwood or something. Oh, yeah. It's like, it's okay to play rock and roll again. You know what I mean? And You Am I was a band that had that same impact on me as a young person into rock and roll. Yeah. Marshall stack. It's okay to have a Marshall stack, Yeah, well, Nirvana definitely got me going, and Silverchair, because that was around the time Silverchair was getting started. That's when I started learning guitar. So it's probably those two bands for me. Yeah. Guns N' Roses on a different sort of level with, Slash and his guitar skills. So, and they're still having impacts, all these years later. Well, that's the beauty of great music. It's eternal. And
And each of those acts you've mentioned have all made something in their collection of works that will be considered timeless, you know?
Yeah.
It's that's the quest, is to make music that's timeless, you know, whatever it is you're making. You know, but getting back to the Nirvana thing, yeah, it was I think it turned us all into grunge bands for a little while. Like when our band first started, we had a bit more of a heavier sound, and I was using a Gibson, and I think it just it made it a bit easier if you weren't a virtuoso musician. It made it more acceptable for you to just do what you do.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that other bands didn't give you license to do that. Other bands in the 80s like Husker Du and Fugazi and Dead Kennedys, other bands had paved the way, and Jane's Addiction, those kind of bands had paved the way for individualism within an alternative music scene that sort of became mainstream.
Yeah.
That's also, remember that at that point in time there was a real indie major kind of contrast, you know, like not many bands, I think, prior to Husker Du and Jane's Addiction were signing to Warner's, you know, and then when Nirvana signed to Geffen, it was like, okay, they're going into the big wide world, you know, because they were on Sub Pop, and it's like Sub Pop had this kind of occultish sort of cottage industry thing, and Geffen kind of took it with him and took it to the world. But the power of Nirvana's music, you could sort of say that it was almost inevitable that being so good that the world needed to hear it.
But it was such a big jump from Bleach in 89 to Nevermind in 91, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Two very different.
Yeah.
Like that was almost sort of metal in, you know, had a metal undertone, Bleach. And then, I mean, you could hear the songwriting skills in it still, and then you hear Nevermind, and that was only like 2 years, you know, and then just a massive jump, I guess.
And and also the different hoops bands jump through when they get signed. I mean, I think I read a quote from Kurt saying that the album sounded like Motley Crue or something when he first heard Nevermind. It was so slick, you know, but, you know, we love it. We, as music fans, we love those records for what they are. We don't think of what they could have been. Yeah. Only the artist has that luxury of thinking, well, it's not as raw or it's not as dirty as I would have liked, and therefore they get Steve Albini to make the next record. So
yeah, which was killer.
Yeah.
Oh. But, you know, you needed an album like Nevermind, which is pretty slick, to then appreciate an album like In Utero, I think.
And when we say slick, I guess we say it within the context of rock music. Like the production on Nevermind is just jaw-dropping. Yeah. You know, like the Butch Vig production, but the Andy Wallace mix, it's just unparalleled, you know?
Well, they said, you know, one of the many documentaries that's sort of floating around, that I think Butch Vig did a mix of Teen Spirit, and if they'd have released that, it wouldn't have been, you know, as popular as it was with the Andy Wallace mix.
Yeah.
But it wasn't huge. Well, maybe I should go back and listen before I comment, but
I
don't think it was a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's all speculative.
Yeah.
It's like when Paul remixed the Let It Be sessions for the Naked, Let It Be Naked, the Beatles thing, sort of rewriting history, you know, like you know, sometimes you just accept a record at face value, and I don't often dig too deep and think of what ifs, like if Nirvana had been mixed by someone, if Nevermind had been mixed by someone else, or it's just one of those things. It's just a great moment in time, you know.
Yeah.
It was just a once in a lifetime record, you know.
And it kind of, would you say it sort of set the rest of the 90s in motion for the music scene, basically?
Well, it did to a great extent. It set a precedent, I guess, and a lot of bands felt they had to match it sonically. And I'm not saying that our band were exempt from it as well. We started in 94, and me having come out of the sort of the cleaner pop world of the Smiths and R.E.M. and that more jangly kind of stuff. I think some of the early Even stuff paid tribute to that sound in a different in a small way, you know, like we're essentially like a pop rock band.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost like when the dust settles, the bands that survived the 90s sort of turn into the bands that they probably were always going to turn into, you know, when the distortion sort of toned down a bit.
Yeah. And then you had the new metal towards the end of the 90s and 2000s. That was another sort of change.
Yeah, and you know, that was a scene that I couldn't embrace because I was heading down a different musical path. You know, I was heading down the more sort of Beatles, Kinksy kind of, almost pastoral kind of. I couldn't really relate to new metal. I could understand its attraction and the power of it, but looking back on new metal, I can't really think of a song from that era that I would think is a great sort of classic song. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's purely subjective. Like it's not my cup of tea, but I felt like in the late 90s our band were fighting against that kind of genre.
Yeah. Let's talk about Even, iconic Melbourne-based rock trio who just celebrated your 27th anniversary. How does that feel? 27 years as a band with the same three guys.
I know. It's quite an achievement. I'm trying to think of other bands that have had the same lineup since day one, and I can't think of a lot.
Aerosmith,
U2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not a lot of bands that come to mind. I'm sure there's quite a few out there.
Yeah.
Green Day?
Yeah. Living End.
Had a different drummer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, had drummer change, yeah.
All right.
We've only had a lineup additions. We've never had a lineup sort of overhaul, so to speak, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I digress, as you know, from part one.
So you played your first show together on March 4th, 1994. And, you know, you've picked up generations of fans along the way since then and obviously built a very loyal fan base. So that first show was at the Empress of India Hotel in Fitzroy North with Ammonia and Hurdy-Gurdy. And you recently posted the set list that you used for that night.
Yeah.
Is there any songs from that set list that you still, you know, have as a permanent song on today's set list?
Not permanent. And part of the reason is, this is a fairly lame reason, is that some of the early songs had different guitar tunings.
Oh, yeah.
So depending on how prepared I am for a show, I won't write a set list full of different tunings to keep it easier for myself during guitar change. That's what a stupid reason to not play songs anymore.
No,
but,
makes sense. Makes sense.
They can be played in standard tuning, just some of them don't resonate the same way. But occasionally we'll play 24 Hour Cynic or Superglue, which I think is on that first set list from memory, which were on our first EP in 95. But like I was talking to you about last time, sometimes I might have been a bit self-conscious in the past about playing older material in that sort of grungy area where we sort of maybe trying a bit too hard to be something we weren't. But I think now, having been around long enough to have that distance from that period, I don't feel so sort of embarrassed or shy about playing that old stuff anymore, because it's part of it's part of the band's body of work, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Which is consisted of about 7 albums, a couple of EPs and a few compilations. What does it feel like to have such a massive body of work behind you? And obviously you're still creating a lot going forward, but what's it like to have that in the background in your library of music? Well,
it's exciting in many aspects, because as a kid or as a teenager, you kind of fantasize about releasing a record or a CD, and you can share that joy of having your music documented on a CD or a cassette or a record. it's a bit surreal when you're doing it yourself, and I'm not sure about yourself, but I often feel that everything I do falls short of my heroes.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the motivation for continuing to make music. You try and perfect what you do, or not perfect because that's impossible, but you try and refine what you do. To give you a more condensed answer, I feel proud that our band was deemed worthy to be signed back in the early or mid-90s to Rubber Records. We did 3 albums with Rubber before we went independent in about 2003. Yeah, so it feels nice to have your own records in your collection, but that said, I don't often derive much pleasure listening to my own music.
Yeah, I think once you go through the phase of writing it, recording it, and probably playing it live a bunch of times, there's probably little desire to go back and chuck on a CD and see what it sounds like. But
yeah, I think the joy comes from making it and performing it. I don't get maximum joy hearing it back. But that said, the more time I've spent recording, I get pleasure from hearing it if it's a true indication of what I'm trying to put across. Like, even the real mixed bag, it's a, I like the Sex Pistols and Pink Floyd and ABBA and Kiss and R.E.M. and the Stone Roses and Funkadelic. So it sounds nothing like any of those bands, but if I like it, and hopefully if Matt and Wally like the songs that I'm putting forward, then that's, like I said earlier, the other chat we had, it's kind of its own reward. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess all those inspirations you draw from somehow funnel out into an even song or a solo song of yours.
Yeah,
all the influences spill out in some way. So in 2018, you guys released Saturn Returns, which is probably one of my favourite cover arts I've seen in a little while. And the vinyl was also available in hot pink, apparently. Is it still?
There could be a few kicking around.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the coloured vinyl thing is kind of worn off now. I think it might be. I think we might have cooked our goose in that world. So maybe the next one will just be 180 gram black vinyl.
Yeah. Back to basics.
Yeah, there's probably a few kicking around. I guess it had been 7 years since we'd made a record, so we thought let's just have fun with it. And like I said to you on our previous discussion, with the cover, I just wanted to be bold and just put ourselves out there, even though we're older now. But it's the same 3 people making the music, and I don't put my face on record covers very often. I did it once in '98 with Even, and once in 2014 with Paul Kelly on the Merry Souls album. And I look like I just robbed a bank. I look like I've just crawled out of a dumpster with a mustard suit on, I tell you. And my son and daughter, they tease me every time they see that photo. When Paul sent us the photos for approval, I said, not sure about this photo. And this was 2014, and I thought, man, it's been, so long since I've been on an album cover. I at least want to be happy with the photo.
Yeah.
Paul goes, no, Fish and I really like it. Fish was the guy doing the artwork. I think his name was Fish. It was one of those kooky industry nicknames. Anyway, and I just fired back the email saying, it's your album, man.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no, in a nice way, it's like, okay, I can't help the way I look. I look like I've just crawled out of a bin at the back of a supermarket. But getting back to the Even thing, it's like, okay, I'll spruce myself up to the best of my ability. And if I may digress briefly, the day we got that photo taken was the same day that I recorded all the guitar tracks for the last track on the record, Return to Stardust.
Okay.
So we got the photo shoot done in the studio about 5 or 6 in the afternoon. Jay Hines, who took the photo, he packed up all his gear, his tripods and his umbrellas and all that stuff, and Matt and Wally and Jay all exited the building, and I did a Jimmy Page and sort of, shoot everyone away and let me get busy. So I redid all the guitars for Return to Stardust, the last track on the record. So can I digress again?
Sure.
Okay. That morning, I was in the car driving to get some supplies or some groceries or something, and I had a baseball cap on, and the wind blew in the car, and the hat flicked off, and I went to grab the hat, and I got my finger caught in the that thing of the car where the window goes in. The recess where the window would normally go. I got my finger caught in that on the way through to grab my hat. And I'm driving, and I look at my finger, and I realised that I'm no doctor, but I think I dislocated it. Yeah. And it was a finger that I'd had previously injured as a kid. So I did all that business. And I was recording that night, okay? So dislocated finger, photo shoot, redid all the guitars for one of the tracks on the same day. So I look back on that album cover very fondly for different reasons.
What hand was the finger?
Thankfully, it was on the strumming hand.
Right, okay, yeah.
So on the night of doing all these guitar parts, I think I had a bit of elastoplast on these guys. Yeah, I did actually, and I've got the picking hand, and I'm, pretending for 9 minutes that I'm David Gilmour. Yeah. Playing essentially a guitar solo through the whole song. And Timmy Johnson, who tracked that song, was in the control room. I'm in the recording room with 2 AC30s, a Rat pedal, a Strat, a delay pedal, and I'm having the best day of my life.
Nice setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the day ended with me playing guitar. It started with me dislocating my finger.
Man, those fingers are a precious thing, aren't they?
Well, as you know yourself, as a guitarist, they are to be looked after.
Yeah. I sort of fractured mine back when I was like 20, and it's like my forefinger of my right picking hand. Yeah. And the longer I play, it sort of gets a bit weaker. Yeah. So I've sort of had to adjust the way I hold my pick, but I kind of worry for years ahead that it's going to really sort of stifle me. But
well, you've got to. It's not for me to say what you've got to do, but what you might do is develop some kind of exercise for this guy. I sound like a sports scientist now.
Well, it's kind of.
Or you could just gaffer tape the pick to your thing.
Yeah.
I just think of Tony Iommi. He managed to play all that amazing guitar with caps, plastic caps on his fingers. I mean, that's just insane.
What did he chopped off basically the tips of his fingers, didn't he?
I believe so.
Or something.
Yeah, I don't quote me on this. Yeah. I think it might have been a workplace injury. Yeah. And the last time I read an article about it, he said he still carries them around in a little tin. He carries the things around.
Wow.
But anyway, long story short, we must look after the digits, mate.
Yeah. I mean, you look at someone like Mick Mars from Motley Crue, his whole body is basically seized up on him because of his bone disease. I can't remember what it's called, but somehow his fingers still manage to work and he can play his guitar.
Yeah, he's which is incredible. Because could have been the other way around, Yeah. Could have been the hands going first.
Yeah. So is there a new album in the works for Even? A follow-up to Saturn Returns?
There is, yeah. It's in the works, and it's been a very piecemeal process, if that's the right word.
Okay.
Piecemeal.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it's like sort of bit by bit,
Right, yeah.
Because of last year's interrupted flow, the band could only get together very briefly. And when I say the band, at that point in time, it was just myself and Matthew, because the way we work or tend to work most efficiently these days is if Matt and I record a track together, and while he does the Paul McCartney thing, he'll come in later and put his bass on at the end. Yeah. And then he can hear the song and hear where it's going and put what he deems an inventive and worthy bass line over a pre-existing track. Sometimes we track live. A few of the songs on Saturn Returns we tracked live as a band at the trio, and then I'd redo vocals, and while he might fix up a bass thing or overdub more guitars. Right. But this time around, the year being what it was constructed from disparate. Some of the songs were from disparate recording sessions, and I've shaped songs based on what I had at my disposal, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just Matt and I playing a rhythm track, then I'll put a vocal on while they'll come over when it was safe to do so and put some bass down.
Right.
So tomorrow he comes down and I've got 3 more tracks to do with bass.
Okay.
And then we do his BVs and then we're done.
Cool.
Yeah.
So have we got a release sort of rough date in mind?
I've got a rough date in mind, but I'm not going to say because it might not be met.
Right.
But let me put it to you this way. I reckon it'll be out by winter time.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be cagey to be sort of pretentious and stupid, but it's because the industry being what it is, as you know, you can't really predict. But I think sometime in the middle of winter it'll come out.
And is it sort of similar to Saturn Returns, like a bit of a follow-on from that, or is it going to be quite a bit different?
Yeah, it's in a similar, in some ways it's similar because, one of the main things on this record, the next Even record, there's going to be lots of, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, lots of guitar solos. I mean, you know, for some people that's not what they want to hear, but for me, it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Sounds good to me.
And that song, Return to Stardust, gave me the impetus to not be shy about doing long guitar solos.
Yeah.
Or as Link calls them from the men, his lead breaks.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not a great singer. So in conjunction with that, I like to play guitar in a way that someone would play a trumpet or a sax, or someone with a great voice would ad-lib with vocals. So I don't do much vocal ad-libbing because I know what my limits are. With guitar ad-libbing, I feel that I've got more scope. As a player, I think there's more scope for me to play, kind of extended pieces of music on the guitar than as if I was ad-libbing on vocals, because that would get very tiresome.
Okay. Yeah. And you guys have got some big shows coming up, supporting Died Pretty at the Croxton in April. Yeah, which is big shows.
It's exciting because these shows were scheduled for April 2019.
Yeah.
So 2 years in the making, these shows. And, you know, bless Ronnie, he was unwell and he's been recovering, and, you know, Ron and the band, they're just a magical band. So to be able to play on the same bill is an absolute thrill for us. We played with Died Pretty in 2016 at Max Watts. Might have been still called the Hi-Fi by then, I can't remember. But, you know, you get to play your own music, but then you also get to sit side of stage and watch Died Pretty. So, you know, we're all in our 50s now, but we're still fans of music. We still love seeing great bands, and we get to see them as well as play on the same show, which is it's an honour, you know. Like, I don't mean to sound falsely sincere about that, but it is an absolute honour.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any chance of you jumping on stage for a song, for an encore or something like that with them?
That's a great question.
Or can I not give that away?
Well, the thing is, I can't speak for Died Pretty, but they've never struck me as a kind of band that would invite extra kind of musicians on stage. But I mean, if there was a Velvet Underground or a Doors song that they were happy to do, and I'd definitely come up. But look, it's probably safe to say that no, I'll just be watching from the wings.
Okay, which is cool.
Yeah,
you can just relax then.
Absolutely.
So Even played you do it every year, like your big annual Christmas show at the Corner. Last year's, was that your first gig together sort of for most of the year because of lockdown and that sort of thing?
It was. We did a couple of streaming events. We did Delivered Live, and we did the Cherry Bar, and they were both in the earlier part of 2020. One was in April and one was a bit later, but that felt great to play. And at that point in the year, I hadn't been listening to much loud music, so to be on a stage playing loud music again was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But then coming out to play the Corner in December, it was pretty freaky, but in a good way. Like, we hadn't played a pub show for over a year. And, you know, the venue had reformatted everything based on the restrictions So it was nice to play the corner because depending on how popular you are at the time, sometimes the corner's a hard room to fill. So
Yeah.
on the upside, we managed to get nice turnouts for each of the 4 shows. So we did 2 shows over 2 days with a day in between. So we had a Monday and Wednesday, and we had a day off on the Tuesday. And I really dug it. I'm not sure if it suited all the band members playing 2 shows in one day because I think the physical requirements are different for each member. But I loved it, mate. I was, yeah, it was really good. It was great to play there again.
What was it like playing with the band again? Like, were you guys a bit rusty playing together, or after all these years, it sort of just glued just like that?
Halfway between that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like we had a couple of rehearsals leading into it because we were a little bit unrehearsed, but our music is not overly refined. I don't think we're not such a slick band that we need to be super polished. I mean, if we can sort of remember the songs, that's great. But we had a couple of practice sessions, and I think by the 4th show we were a well-oiled machine. You know, I was joking with myself that it felt like being on tour.
Yeah.
You know, playing 4 shows in succession is a little bit unprecedented for us at the moment.
Okay.
We haven't toured for a long time.
Yeah, the two shows in one day would be like by the second time you're playing, it'd be just cruising.
Yeah, to a point. Yeah,
depending on like you said, the physical toll that it takes.
Yeah,
but
which I could play till I'm till I'm crawled in the corner in a screaming heap. You know, I'm it doesn't bother me, but I think also you want to keep it fresh. Every show had to be marginally different, so we changed up the set list a bit. But yeah, it was great to play, and the band is its own thing. Like, you know, it takes on a life of its own at some point in a gig.
So well-oiled machine by this point.
I wouldn't say it's well-oiled.
Pretty well-oiled.
Frequently oiled.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So with your sound as a band, like there's definitely a pop sensibility.
Yeah.
Sort of reminiscent of the pop rock of the 60s and 70s, like the Byrds and a few other bands. What would some of the other influences, I guess, of Even be? What sort of bands, like the Stone Roses and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of bands that we all like. I think when we started out, we were doing a couple of covers. We did a Kinks cover, we did a Go-Go's cover. The 3 of us actually like a lot of similar music, you know, like Beatles is a big one for us, and the Lars, the British band from Liverpool who put out a record in 1989, 1990. The Lars, we all love the Lars, and the Smiths, we're all massive fans of the Smiths, it's a band that really polarizes some people, but for us, we're like all Smiths tragics.
Yeah.
We love Zeppelin and the Who and the Kinks. Hoodoo Gurus, like a lot of our gig going days in the 80s was out seeing bands like the Hoodoo Gurus and Midnight Oil, and so I didn't even answer the question, did I?
Yeah, pretty much. There's quite a few different ones, as I sort of assumed there would be.
Yeah, well, yeah,
lots of different.
Yeah, lots of 60s, 70s. Stones, and I think we all like different periods from different artists. But I think the common ground, it's our common ground is pretty strong, you know.
So I had a question from Rob Heller. He said he wanted to know when your love of the British pop sound sort of started.
Wow, that's a great question. Oh, look, it's got to be Fox on the Run by The Sweet.
Ah.
You know?
Yeah.
Great British rock band.
Yeah.
What a band. I think it all filtered down from there, like The Sweet, Kiss, who within the members of that group were all Anglophiles. You know, they loved Bad Company and Free and the Beatles. So all the Kiss guys were big fans of British rock.
Yeah.
And that filtered through their music to me. And then Beatles, like the Beatles floodgates opened for me probably as a teenager.
Yep.
And then once that gate is open, it's like, okay, well, there's the Who and the Kinks and the Yardbirds, Rolling Stones, you know. Let's not forget the Stones.
Yeah.
and then as you get older, you discover other British rock bands or American rock bands. But okay, so I guess to pinpoint it, probably in the mid-70s with Fox on the Run by The Sweet.
Yeah, so that was mid-70s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I recall from memory, I think it was 75, but I'd need you or one of your listeners to fact check that for me without the Google machine in front of me. Every time I see that single in a shop, I buy it.
Yeah.
I've still got the original my brother and I had when we were kids, but on the rare occasion that I do a DJ set, I always make sure I've got a copy of Fox on the Run.
It's still a great sounding track too, isn't it?
It's astounding.
Yeah.
Like that synthesizer opening and just the power of the band coming in. But I think Sweet may have been unfortunately dismissed due to their pop status, but they rocked, man. Like each member of that original lineup were virtuosos. In their own way. Mick Tucker on the drums was just an absolute beast.
Yeah.
Andy, Steve, and Brian were all brilliant musicians. I feel that might be overlooked, but I think when you talk to musos and when you scratch the surface of the Sweet, people, they have that sort of glazed-eyed knowing nod of how good they were.
Okay.
The singles that they had in that period, 75 to 80, are just phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay. And even guest programmed Rage last year. Was that your first time doing that?
Yes, our first time. And we programmed. It was filmed in November 2019.
Okay.
So, the wonderful world of 2020 meant that it got aired a bit later.
Right.
Sorry. And there was a comma there and I cut you off.
No, that's all right. I mean, it must have been, great to do that, obviously, and pick everyone's sort of playlist for the night and early morning. Is that something you've been wanting to do all these years?
Yeah, it was an absolute wish list thing for us. And with that comes the dilemma. Who do you leave off the boat? Like all the Aussie bands that we came up with in the 90s and 2000s. I kind of made a little bit of a blanket decision to not play anyone so that I wouldn't offend anyone.
Right.
Of all my mates, which it's a little bit of a cop out. But I think we might have played a snout song just as a representative of all the Aussie acts that we. Not representing all the Aussie acts, but as a hat tip to the fact that we had peers that we left off our playlist only because we didn't have enough time to playlist them all. So it was exciting, but it's also a dilemma because there's a lot of music you have to leave off, and you've got three people in the band, so each member has a finite amount of songs to playlist. So it was a little bit like in Wizard of Oz when you get behind the curtain and you see there's a dude there with a machine. It's like you imagine what programming Rage would be like, having never been able to do it, but then when you get to do it, it's like, oh shit, we only get this amount of songs.
That's tougher than you think.
But it was great, and actually I had fun watching it I watched it in real time at home and stayed up all night watching it, just enjoying the music that we picked, and we were definitely showing our age and our roots.
Yeah, cool. Well, sticking with the whole TV thing, obviously being in a band in the 90s in Australia, we had that awesome show called Recovery, which even featured on a few times. I think was your first appearance playing Mayfair Laundry Bus in 1998, and you had short hair.
Yes, I had short hair.
Yes.
I think I'm due for a haircut. I think we might have been on there in 96 as well.
Okay, yeah.
But I've got a couple of VHS tapes of the Recovery, and there's some online, but man, what can you say about Recovery? It was just such a godsend having a live music show in the 90s. And the funny thing is the shoot was so early and often ourselves or other bands would have had gigs the night before. Some bands probably didn't even get to go to bed, but it was brilliant. And you have a potential audience there, just some kids who might not get to go to gigs in the city or go to licensed venues. They have this chance to see a band that is right in front of them. There's a Regurgitator over there, there's Magic Dirt over here, and there's a couple of other bands. And I think there's
Jebediah,
or
had the Foo Fighters on there as well.
Yeah, they had a lot of big acts, and John Spencer, and it was brilliant. Like it seems a world away now.
It does, yeah. I mean, we sort of grew up with that every Saturday morning. You know, chuck on the TV early in the morning, and Dylan Lewis, you know, he was perfect for that.
Yeah,
and it was just such a great show. Yeah. And you did appreciate it at the time, but even more so now, because we don't sort of have anything like that anymore.
No, you're right. We don't have a weekend morning show with comedy sketches and live music and touring bands popping in. And
it was just good fun.
Yeah.
You know? Do you think we're really missing a show like that in today's landscape? Like, even if it's just within Australia, we're just really missing that sort of show.
And unfortunately, it can't be. You know, you can't reheat the souffle, as I like to say, because with digital media being what it is now, the allure of free to air TV doesn't hold the same weight as it did in the pre-internet kind of era. You know, like, I'm old enough to know that Sunday night there's a show that I want to watch, and I'll watch it in real time.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays you can watch anything, anywhere, anytime, pretty essentially. You know, you don't really miss anything.
Yeah.
So I think we miss it, and I think we need something like that. But unfortunately, I don't think it would be hard to cultivate the excitement, given that everything is so accessible and spread out now, and everything's available almost, you know, around the clock. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if the excitement would be there if there was a live music show. It would be great if there was one.
Yeah, because, I mean, it was great for, you know, fans of music, but it was also great for the bands. You know, it was a great outlet for the bands to jump on and play your music, because there doesn't seem to be anything like that now. I know it's a totally different time, but was there talk of bringing that back?
I'm not sure. There could have been. I know ABC had a show called The Set on last year, 2019, and some of the people that I've worked with at the ABC have had a hand in that show getting off the ground. That's a similar concept, you know, a bunch of live music, almost like a Jules Holland thing, where there's a few different artists in almost like a club environment, which was nice, but more of a nighttime kind of thing. And then you might recall Recovery went to nights for a while there. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So it was kind of like that was the end of that sort of journey. I don't know if Recovery had, I think there was probably talk of an isolated kind of, maybe a nostalgic one-off or something, but Spicks and Specs has had a bit of a repeat series as well. But, it's just a different time now with everything, like I said before, and I'm the same as any other civilian. I'll get on YouTube and look at, you know, a Kiss Prince conference for Creatures of the Night, or Bob Seger live in frickin', you know, Toronto or something. You know, it's a great joy to be able to find things instantaneously, but the downside is that I don't think there'd be much of a maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there would be a market for a live TV show.
Yeah, it was just such a great time. Like, I mean, being a fan of music in the 90s and discovering it like myself, it was great. And then I can imagine, was that one of the best periods of time to be in a band? I know you weren't in a band in the 60s or 70s. That would have been great too, I'd imagine, and even the 80s.
Yeah.
But the 90s just like had a charm.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. What are some of your favourite memories from those days, like when the band started?
I think what we were sort of alluding to it in our other chat about Nirvana, when the kind of the whole sort of scene changed to the point where it wasn't so image-based, like pop music wasn't. Like in the 80s and probably the late 80s, mid-80s pop scene and late 80s, sort of, for want of a better word, hair metal scene, things were so image driven that it was often at the expense of the music. Whereas in the early 90s, it sort of reversed. Whereas the music was the focus and the image was secondary.
Mm.
So it enabled bands to put music first and not feel they had to be the whole package, like if Duran Duran had looked like a bunch of brickies labourers, would they have been so successful? We're not sure, like it's all part of the excitement of rock and roll is the image of a group. But I think the Nirvana kind of wave of popularity and the cultural shift that came with that, it may have opened up people to be a bit more free with themselves. And I'm going to wear my Converse on stage tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear this torn cardigan. It certainly liberated me. Like I go through phases every week about how you present yourself publicly.
Yeah.
But that period was great. You could rock up in anything and it was accepted, like getting to your word about the charm of that period. Each band had their own kind of vibe, and there was a really sweet spot for me probably around 95, 96 when our band had sort of been around for a year or two, and there seemed to be a real kind of community mentality before each band sort of had aspirations to go beyond the community of their bands. Like I just remember the scene around the Evelyn and the Punters Club in Brunswick Street was a real hotbed, for want of a better word, of bands that that we played with and felt an affinity with.
Okay.
Because we're all fairly unassuming bands,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a great time. It was a really cool time. I probably didn't appreciate it as much at the time as I should have, because I was probably hung up on,
living in it
and having neurotic 20-something, personality traits.
So it was definitely a feeling of a scene as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great. And I think, like the sort of the ripples of the whole Nirvana impact permeated through a whole bunch of different sort of urban music communities.
So all the bands around that time, like in that scene that you're talking about, were they all really supportive of each other?
In general, I felt they were. I felt that there was, like I said before, real community spirit. Like even now, there's a similar kind of mentality. Whereas, we're playing. Can we use your backline? Can I use your amp? Like that sort of became known to me when we went up to Sydney for the first time. We slept on someone's floor or couch. We used to crash at each other's houses. Our bands would stay at each other's houses when they travelled interstate and borrow each other's gear, and it was really cool. Like there was, at that point, I don't think anyone was jockeying for kind of top dog status. There was always going to be a bit of that involved, depending on your personality type. But it was a really cool time. I've got friends that I made in the 90s that I'm still, really, really good friends with. And I met these people through the music biz, and that goes above and beyond all the moving parts of being in a band. Like how many records did you sell? How many people came to your gig? Did you get in the ARIA chart? All that stuff is kind of pretty much irrelevant when you think of the connections you've made with people along the way, your bandmates included, that's what is constant. Everything else is all changeable,
It must be incredible to share everything you've shared with the same three guys or the same two other guys.
Yeah.
Going on this journey together.
Yeah, I think, it's pretty surreal. I mean, there's a bit of luck involved as well because, it can be a bit of a fluke if there's a combination of people that can work together. It's for that extended period, because a lot of bands in the past burn brightly and then that's it. They can't put it back together. So yeah, it's been an absolute advantage, you know, just in terms on a personal level, being able to, for the most part, get things done as a trio, as a unit.
Yeah.
You know, without you know, being accountable to each other and ourselves, you know. Yeah.
All right, so 2021 even, we've got a new album coming out. We've got those support shows with Died Pretty. What other shows? Have you got any other shows or tours booked or hoping to book?
Well, I reckon my prediction is, due to the busyness of our individual lives and working schedules, I reckon we're playing Boogie Festival at Easter.
Cool.
So between Boogie and the Died Pretty supports, I think we'll probably keep our heads down until Christmas time.
Okay.
And come back all guns blazing around Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that'll give whoever might be interested in hearing the new album, they'll give them a chance to absorb the record.
Mm-hmm.
And then by Christmas time, we might play a few songs off it, and they won't be alien.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Look forward to the new album.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I hope no one's put off by long guitar solos. There's plenty of them.
I'm looking forward to it.
Let me tell you, like, it's you know, I've let myself off the chain, Craig.
Oh dear.
Yes.
All right.
It's
Well, your stuff is very tasteful, so
depends if you like that kind of stuff. It is a matter of taste. Yeah, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's the only tea I know how to make.
Cool.
Sorry, dude.
Yes. Love that last chord.
Oh my god. Oh yeah. This is up a bit higher, I think.
I think it might be.
We'll get back to that later.
Yeah,
It's just a monster.
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it is an absolute freaking masterpiece.
Yeah.
God.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's just extraordinary. An
Yep.
extraordinary song.
Yep.
Every aspect, like the lyrics are brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a rock out section. It's got brushes. Like, is it the only Zeppelin song where Bonham plays brushes on?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think it could be.
Okay.
I mean, he uses sticks live, but
Yep.
pretty sure when he enters on the kit, he's playing brushes.
Okay.
Like, yeah, don't quote me on that one, but and John Paul Jones on piano, mellotron, and bass, if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Fucking hell.
So let's talk about Ash and some of your guitars. Tell us about some of you were talking about your Maton earlier, your favourite old Maton. What are some of your other favourite guitars you've got, and how many have you got?
Oh, gee, I've got a few, but I haven't got as many as Rick. Rick from Cheap Trick. Yeah, look, I've got probably too many, but I did a bit of a grown-up thing last year and the year before. I sold a few guitars.
Oh.
Yeah, so I feel like a bit of an adult now.
Okay. How was that?
It was
How did that feel?
It felt great because it was just practical, and you know, 2020 being 2020, I thought, you know, I'm not gigging. They're sitting in a case in a storage shed. So yeah, I thought I'd be a bit more practical and offload a few.
Okay.
Well, that Maton that you mentioned, it's a late 90s Maton. It's got block inlays on the neck, and it reminded me of the the Beatles, you know, it had a bit of a look about it that was sort of reminiscent of the Beatles Gibson acoustics they used to play. For some reason, it just struck me, and I was at the Maton factory. I think I was there. I don't know why I was there. It was late 90s, and I just saw it on the rack, and I thought, gee, that's nice. And I looked at the price tag, and I think it was out of my range at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm almost embarrassed to say, but I rang up David from Rubber Records, God bless him, and I said, David, do you reckon I could get an advance or borrow some money to grab this guitar? And he was really, really kind, and I think he loaned me half of what the guitar was worth.
Yep.
It was I don't know how much it was, probably a couple of grand or something, but at the time, and at any point in time, a couple of grand is not always easy to come by.
Mm.
Anyway, long story short, I bought the guitar, and it was just probably the most deluxe thing that I had owned as an acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 28, you know. I'd had sort of okay-ish guitars up to that point, but bought a Rickenbacker when I was about 18. So it'd been about 10 years since I'd bought a deluxe instrument.
Yeah.
And that guitar has been on every recording that I've done since. So it's from 1998 till now.
Mm-hmm.
That guitar has been on every record I've made that's featured an acoustic guitar.
It's not a 12-string, isn't it? You got a separate 12-string? Yeah,
I got a 12E about 6 years ago. A couple of friends of mine, Julian from the Stems was doing a bit of work for Maton, and Paul at Maton took it upon himself to give me this 12-string acoustic.
And is that the guitar you play on Indian? What's that song from your solo album?
Indian Bells.
Is that a 12-string on there?
It's actually my Maton 6.
Okay.
But it's in a tuning not dissimilar to the tuning of one of your guitars. It's in an open C tuning.
Yep.
But it's a David Crosby tuning.
Right. It sounds huge.
Yeah. Well, I recorded it on my phone and just like, wow, that sounds good. And instead of me having to go through the ordeal of having to learn it and re-record it properly, I just used the phone recording. Because, you know, phones being what they are, they record fairly decent audio.
Yeah.
No, so that's the... You know what? I don't think it's either of those guitars. I think it might be my Suzuki.
Right.
No, it might be my Morris Dreadnought. God, I don't keep notes about these things.
But it's a 6.
It's
acoustic.
Not
actually a 12. Oh,
I'm pretty sure it's a 6 with all the droning strings. It sounds like a 12.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yep.
No, I'm thinking about it now. I'll probably go and listen to it and say, no, I'll call you up in the middle of the night. Yeah. No, it's actually the 12, mate.
Do you remember what actually drew you to wanting to play guitar? Like, obviously, you're probably a music fan, but what was it about the guitar that
I don't know.
suckered you in?
Don't know. I think probably the Sweet Fox on the Run. But that said, that guitar on that track is very prominent, but it's also the drumming and the vocals on that track that drew me in as well. My brother had a guitar. He had a guitar lying around that was a present, and it lay around for ages, and I just picked it up one day and plucked it, and it's like, that sounds awesome. Yeah. Even just the low E string, just plucking it, you know, it's like, I like that sound. Yeah.
I'm trying to think back to what got me started sometimes, and it wasn't like a huge decision you make. You just sort of either stick with it or you don't.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I won't lie to you. I think being a Kiss fan really encouraged my love of guitars because, and I'm going to say his name properly, Ace Frehley was a massive influence on me as a child. Like, he was a superstar, you know, of the 70s, and he played a freaking Les Paul, you know, like, and that was like, I was just completely obsessed with Kiss and with Ace in particular because, you know, like his persona it was out of this world, you know. It was like, no one looks like that, no one plays like that.
They really did inspire a lot of bands, didn't they?
Well, yeah, it was incredible. Like, you know, in the 70s, you know, they were at the absolute peak of their powers, and like a lot of bands, they became a pathway to other bands, you know, like the Stones, and, you know, because they did a Stones cover on the Dynasty album, and I didn't know that was a Stones song.
Which
2000
one was that?
Man.
Oh.
Yeah, so Ace did a Stones cover, and, you know, I've discovered a lot of good bands through other bands, you know. But that's, I'd say between the Sweet and Kiss, it was almost undeniable that and my brother's guitar and the sound that one string made. It was like, yeah, I think this is where I'm heading.
Yeah, and it was just the feel of it. And I was talking to you before about, you know, we've got no musicians in my family. My uncle played a bit of guitar, and, you know, he passed away quite a while ago, and I opened his guitar case after a while of it being closed, and just the the smell, like the musky sort of smell with the sort of stale strings.
Yeah,
I don't know. It made me want to play.
Well, it's an intoxicating aroma. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Aroma?
Yeah.
That's a word, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the lining of a guitar case. I remember a similar experience when I bought my Rickenbacker. I was a trolley boy at a supermarket, and I saved up all my money for a Rickenbacker.
Yeah. How
Disney is that? And I had a similar experience, and I opened the case up, and it's like probably like the musical equivalent of a car, the fresh upholstery in a car.
The car smell?
Yeah.
New car smell?
Yeah. Like new guitar smell is something.
Yeah.
But like you said, you know, old musty guitar smell as well. Like it's a smell unto itself. Like music shops in the 80s smelt like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You know? Swap shop's got a bit of that vibe about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like a flight case that might have been sitting in the corner for 30 years, you know? It's got that kind of woody, earthy kind of stench to it.
Yep.
Or, you know, a fragrance, I should say.
What's your go-to electric guitar for even? I know you play a few different ones, but
yeah, I do indulge a bit with changing them around, but I've got to say, I reckon the Epiphone Casino. It just covers all the bases. Like it's just a beautiful guitar, and I got lucky with I got one off the shelf at Allen's Music in the mid '90s. I just bought it off the rack, you know. You know, I don't think I'd ever walked into a guitar shop per se, but Allen's was a music store, and it just had that the blonde Casino, and this is quite a few years before the Lennon Casinos were produced. So it had that look about it, and I thought, yeah, I want the casino that looks like John Lennon's Casino.
Yeah, cool.
And I just fell in love with it immediately, and I think I've had the guitar repaired maybe 3 or 4 times since I've had it.
Yeah.
And I've had it since 1996. Yeah, so I bought it with my first publishing check, I think. I can't remember exactly, but
cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful guitar. Like it's, you know, a Korean Epiphone. It's, you know, what you see is what you get, but it's not much that guitar can't do.
Has it got 2 humbuckers in it, or is it
2 single coils?
Oh, right.
P90 style pickups,
Okay.
yeah, with the metal covers. So it's kind of got a bit of a bite to it. It's also got the warmth that, yeah, I mean, I think McCartney refers to the Casino as his desert island guitar. Yeah.
And do you keep that in like a standard tuning?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mess around with it too much because it's, you know, being all in one piece, so I don't want to stress the neck out too much. So I try and keep it in standard, and I just want to play it now.
Yeah. So I'm just going to get into some guitar nerd stuff.
Mate,
Not that
I love it. I live for this stuff.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, I'm not a big tech guy, so
Nor am I.
I'm not real complicated about this stuff.
Nor am I. I'm not a tech guy, but I love guitars. So, you know.
All right, well, what's your go-to sort of pick? Like what sort of
Okay.
gauge?
All right. Well, I think it's a 75. I've been buying the Herco, the Herco Picks, and this is super fanboy stuff because I read that David Gilmour uses them,
All right.
and I read that Jimmy Page used them in the 70s, and I figured, okay, well, they must be comfortable, but I use Hercos because they've got grip on them.
Okay.
Yeah, Herco Flex, I think they're called. They're grey picks. And for me, I need grip because I feel like sometimes if I haven't got grip on the pick, I feel a little bit vulnerable. Yeah.
Yep.
How about you? What's your favourite pick?
Well, I've got a few different ones. I'm a little bit indecisive these days.
Yeah.
So I'm picking up a different one sort of every few songs, to be honest.
Yeah.
A bunch of different Tortex ones, mainly the 1mm blue one, especially for electric stuff, which I don't do much of these days. Sometimes that's a bit heavy with the acoustic stuff.
Yeah, I'd feel that would slip out of my hand too much. Maybe my fingerprints wore off over time, but I need some grip.
Yeah, well, I've been trying out these. Jim Dunlop. Yeah.
I bought a packet of those. Actually, I didn't buy a packet of these. There you go. Got some grip for an old man like me.
Yeah, a bit slippery though. I've dropped a few of those just in rehearsal, but usually some of the Tortex ones, I guess.
Yeah, I just like something that I can hang on to because, like I said, I don't sweat a lot, but I just need something with a bit of now you're talking.
Yeah.
Just a Dunlop? Yeah.
Yeah, I was using the 1mm, which is the black one of those for a while.
That's what Wally uses on his bass, the 1mm blacks.
Oh, okay.
And in the late 90s I had a flirtation with using 1mm picks on the guitar, and I enjoyed it, but I feel that there's probably just a bit too much attack, you know?
Okay.
I think I like to have a little bit of give.
Yep.
The Herco 75s, man, if anyone's interested in exploring them, they're really cool because I sound really tech now. You get the purchase on the note, but you also have the stability of the pick not feeling like it's going to slip away, which those ones for me, unfortunately, they don't suit my fingers.
Do most music shops sell them, or are they a rarity?
No, some do, some don't. They're like PG Tips tea bags. You got to know where to find them. But I usually buy them in bulk. Online when I get the urge, you know?
Right.
When my jar starts running down.
Yeah. And do you have a practice routine? Like, I know you probably play quite often, so you keep your chops up anyway, but when you're sitting around at home or warming up for a gig, do you actually warm up and practice?
In recent times, I have been warming up before gigs at the venue, depending on how comfortable it is to pick up a guitar and strum a few things before a show. And I've been inspired by the great Pete Luscombe, who is the drummer in Rockwiz and Paul Kelly's band. He is a dedicated warm-up guy. He'll go away half an hour before a show, put on his headphones, grab a drum pad, some sticks, and he'll warm up. And by the time he hits the stage, he's warm, you know. And I was doing that for a little while, particularly on the Paul Kelly shows during the Groove in the Mood tour we did a few years ago. Earlier in the night, I'd have my guitar backstage and I'd just be practicing some of the more intricate solos, some of the Steve Connolly solos from the Paul Kelly repertoire that a bit challenging for me to play. You know, I try and make sure that I play them true to the originals. So they're the ones I have to practice. I practice those quite a bit before too long. To Her Door, those kind of solos, which are ingrained in people's minds.
Yeah,
you know, you can't freeform those.
Yeah.
Furthermore, to your question, I have a home thing that I do, which is super geeky, but it's a exercise that I made up myself, based on using every finger on my left hand on every string, up and down the neck. Not scales. They're not scales. They're just exercises to make sure that I'm utilising all my fingers and I work my way up and back. And I should be doing this every day, but I do it whenever I can. Some days I've gone without playing a guitar and I think, how come I didn't play guitar today?
Yeah, I think it sounds like I do something similar. I got it out of a guitar magazine, just like...
Yeah.
And then, obviously, and then sort of change up the.
See, I don't think my brain could cope with that. I don't think my brain could cope with that.
Oh. Well, my fingers kind of just.
That's great.
Do it after a while.
Yeah.
But,
no, I think it's good just to. It's an exercise, you know. It's exercise your fingers and your brain. I know it sounds so basic, but
yeah.
Pete and I have talked about this in the past. Like, practice is crucial. You know, I should practice singing. I should practice songwriting. I should practice guitar playing. I end up practicing this, you know, weird fingering fret by fret thing, which is kind of a bit kooky, but it means that I'm playing. You know, it means that I'm. But I guess, given the nature of what I do throughout most of the year, is that I'm playing a lot of repertoires by other artists. So I'm actually exercising my brain by learning those different repertoires.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of which I've contributed to, some of which I haven't. So I'm learning other people's parts a lot of the time,
right? Which
is a real challenge.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, obviously you work with a lot of different artists. Paul Kelly being one. I think Vicar and Linda you've worked with.
Yeah.
The Meanies, the Ronson Hang Up, the Stems, the Swarm, which some of these are your bands as well. You Am I? Have you worked with You Am I?
I've sat in with them once at a gig for the North Melbourne Footy Club, but I haven't recorded with them. But I play with Davey quite regularly in the Marshmallow Overcoat.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, I've played with Davey on and off, and Brett from that band, you know, since the late 90s in different configurations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole list of artists and bands that you'll play with. One of my favourites, Bob Evans, aka Kevin Mitchell from Jebediah. I think I saw you guys, or you played with him maybe a couple of years ago.
And Howler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just about to release a new album, and you're in the video for the new single. Did you play on the whole album?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was that lineup. Gee, what a band. Richard Bradbeer on bass, Lachlan O'Kane on drums, James Fleming on keyboards, Kevin on guitar and vocals. And let's not beat around the bush. Kevin is a really good guitar player.
Yeah.
Like he plays all these parts on the demos, and then he asks me very kindly, "Oh, could you play this part?" It's like, dude, this is perfect. Why did you want me to play this? Like, but he's very gracious in that regard, because he asked me to come in and play on this particular recording. I hadn't played on a Kev record up until that point. So we tracked that record together. That was in February 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that was before the shutdown.
Just before.
Yeah, that was right on the cusp of it, actually, because the following week he had a session of vocals, and it was not long after that things just started really just shutting down wholesale. So we got to track that record, which was brilliant, and the songs are fantastic. Like, yeah, Kevin is just a beautiful guy, really gracious artist to work with, like funny, charming. And I've known Kev since he was a teenager. I know that sounds really patronising and sort of old man-esque, but I've known him since Jebediah were kicking around, and we used to see each other backstage at festivals, and they became this really hot ticket and signed to Murmur, and it got really popular. And I'm going to brag a bit right now. They actually mentioned Even in one of their songs.
Oh, cool.
Back in one of their album tracks. Yeah, we're going to see Even or something. It's like, that's so sweet, you know. And it's always been great running into Kevin, and actually sweet and surreal now that I have played music with him on stage. His music, you know, like it's pretty surreal. Actually, even back to him in Tamworth one year, I think. Might have been Tamworth, or even did a couple of shows with Kevin as well, which is even more surreal, because it's like the singer of Jebediah and the rock band even getting together to play Kev's music in. It's pretty freaky. But look, he's brilliant. He's super organised, a bit like Paul, actually. Like, super organised. Everything's demoed, everything's written, all the parts are kind of sussed out. But there's also leeway for you to flavour it as you sort of see fit within the realms of what you do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, his solo stuff. I mean, I like Jebediah, but I really got into his solo stuff as Bob Evans. And I think I discovered it at the right time around 2010, 11, 12, when I was sort of starting to take on more of an acoustic thing myself, and I became Acoustic Fox. And his Goodnight Bull Creek album was just exactly what I needed. And it's such a great record.
Some beautiful songs on that record.
But every album he releases is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to get to many of his shows as I'd like. So I'm hoping with this new album and hopefully more shows happening that I'll be able to get to a few.
Well, I personally hope that I'm there to play the shows with him, and you can be my guest.
Oh, wicked. Awesome.
You can be my guest. How's this for freaky? I'm doing a show at April 15 with the church, and he's opening up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Are you playing with him?
Well, I don't think it's a band show. I think it might be just Kev solo, but I haven't been... His management haven't asked me if I'm available to play with Kev that night, but in theory I am, because I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
Which is it's pretty strange, but I didn't plan it like that, mate, I promise.
Yeah. So tell us about that, your gig with the church. And
well, that's another surreal...
yeah.
All right. Do you want the long story or the short story?
Up to you. I'm here.
Okay. I'll give you the long story.
Give us the long story.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So in May 2019, Ian went to Brisbane to play a one-day festival at the Triffid venue. I think it was called Autumn Fall Festival. And it was curated sort of for guitar, power poppy, kind of rootsy alternative bands. And we were invited to come and play, which we thought, this is great, let's do it. We went up. On the day of that show, we recorded a song in the afternoon at Jeff Lovejoy's studio in Brisbane, which became a single unto itself called Mark the Days. So we recorded this track in the afternoon, say between 1 and 5 p.m, got our gear, went to the venue, set up, did a sound check, played the show. And on the bill that night was... Ian from Powderfinger. Ian and JC played a set with their old band from their pre-Powderfinger days. I think the Predators or the Creatures, I think they're called Predators. You might want to quote me on that before this goes out.
Okay.
Anyway, we just done our set, and I'd been doing a lot of this sort of David Gilmour-y kind of, flared, long-haired guitar solos. And I can see it now. Ian looks at me at the end of the and says, "Oh, that was great, man. Hey, you should join the church." And up to this point, Ian had been in the band for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I must have given him some weird look. And it's like, how could I join the church? You've already got, yourself and Peter, one of the greatest guitarists walking the planet. And then it became known to me that Peter was on the verge of exiting the group, and the details of which I'm not privy to because it's not really my business. But, Ian goes, "You should join the church, man." He said, "I just texted Steve during, at the end of your set, we should get Ashley to join the band, and I said, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what's happening with with the band, but like, so Steve and I had a phone chat. Probably 2 days after that. I think it was Monday, 2 days after, and Steve and I had a really nice chat. And I'd met Steve and worked with Steve on Rockwiz before. And let's be honest, I'm a massive fan of what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And as a teenager, I was an obsessive fan of the church, because they were something out of the ordinary. They were just something else, like I love the Oils, I love the Gurus, I love the Stems, I love the Easy Beats, I love Sweet, I love Kiss. But the church was something else,
Mm-hmm.
So when the opportunity came to join the band, I was kind of a little bit fraught. It's like, well, am I preserving or desecrating the legacy of this band by joining them? And I decided to not overthink it and just accept this invitation and that's how I ended up joining the church. That said, we haven't played a show since I joined. We've done some recording.
Okay.
So a lot of it's just Zoom chats and sort of getting a strategy in place when we do a show, which is next weekend.
Right.
And that involved me listening to a lot of church music over the last year or two. Like getting inside it in a different way.
So, how much of the back catalogue have you had to learn?
There's a pretty hefty portion. I think, at a church concert, you'd probably expect to hear, a lot of the songs that they're known for, Almost With You and Unguarded Moment, Milky Way and Metropolis, and even some of the earlier stuff like You Took, some of the album tracks from that period. But there's a whole wealth of material that the band has recorded up till now, so I've had to sort of dive in quite deeply in the albums that I wasn't as familiar with. But I've got my head around a lot of the material, and learning those songs for me has not been a chore. It's been an absolute thrill because I love the music so much. It's
going to be exciting to play the first show.
Well, exciting and absolutely. I'll be panic stricken as well.
Quite a build up.
Yeah. It's like an AFL. Someone likened it to an AFL draftee who injures themselves in, the VFL or something, and waits 2 years to play a game. It's a bit like that, but I just think, I hope I can bring the right mentality to what's required. I think I know what makes the band tick on a guitar level, and I hope I can contribute in that regard, because I do have an affinity with the kind of music they make. So, yeah, and I think with Peter's parts, in the same way that I respect Steve Connolly's guitar parts in the Paul Kelly repertoire, it's like people know these parts, and it's not my job to reinvent them or rewrite them,
Yeah, we sort of hear them on the radio every day, and those parts are ingrained in our minds.
Yeah.
And, it would be cool to hear your take on it.
Well, it'll be a slightly, a slightly modified version of what came before, obviously. Like, I can't overstate what influence Marty and Peter had on me as a music fan from the church, and in the same way that Jim and Martin did from the Oils, like these people were, like I said, I had the pleasure of telling them to their faces the other day, they're like alchemists, like Jim and Martin from Midnight Oil. Like when you're a teenager, this stuff is coming at you. It's like, you're feeding off it, this guitar energy. It's like, I could play that, I can't play that. Oh, I can, to be in a position to play that music with Steve, it's a thrill. I just want to do it justice.
Yeah. Well, best of luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
And speaking of Midnight Oil, you released a single in their honour, which was released 35 years ago. One of their classics, Hercules. Yeah. Is it just that single that you re-recorded and released?
Yeah, just a digital single. What happened was in 2015 I was doing some recording in Sydney, and it happened to be at I sound like a big name dropper right now, but it was at Jim's studio, Jim Magini's studio in Sydney. We were doing a soundtrack for an animated Beatles series called Beat Bugs, and I had some downtime, so what I thought I would do, and my brother reminded me that at that point in time in 2015 it was the anniversary, at that point the 30th anniversary of the Species Deceases EP. And that's the 4-track EP they put out in 85, which featured Hercules. And I thought, I'll do a version for my brother. I did a version of Hercules as an audio present to my brother.
Okay.
And then I left it in the archives because I didn't want to release it on its own steam, because I had no ulterior motive for recording the song. It wasn't to draw attention to myself, what's the word I'm looking for? In an insincere way. I wanted to do this Oils cover purely for my brother. Anyway, one thing led to another. Jim rocked up to the studio the next day and he heard it and he was supportive of my quest to record an Oils song.
Yeah.
He even helped me out on playing some guitar on the end of it, believe it or not.
Cool.
So fast forward 5 years, and now it's 35th anniversary.
Yeah.
My brother reminded me again, hey, it's the 35th anniversary of Species to Ceases. You should think about putting that track out. So I put it out on Bandcamp with the proceeds going to Support Act.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to make any money from doing an Oils cover.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that if it generated anything, even a few bucks, that it was going to a good cause. Because, I mean, they were a band that encouraged me as a teenager to open my eyes and ears to things that I might not have been exposed to, you know. So it was my way of honouring their legacy and, you know, having some fun doing an Oils song for a start, but also making sure that the proceeds, they weren't going to me, they were going to people in the industry who were out of work or whatever like that.
Yeah. So that's still available on your Bandcamp?
I believe so. I think it's been available, you know, in perpetuity. Is that the right word?
Yes. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. And obviously, the proceeds go to a good cause.
Yeah.
I was actually YouTubing even the other day, which is where I pulled up a few old interviews, but I stumbled across this thing, the Beatles 50th anniversary rooftop tribute. You recorded in Melbourne back in January 2019.
Yep, sounds about right.
With a few familiar faces, obviously yourself, Brett Wolfenden from the Pictures and the Casanovas, Davey Lane, and a couple other guys. So basically a tribute to the Beatles. And my God, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. Like, I haven't seen this before.
Oh,
that was incredible.
Yeah, we put a bit of work into that. It was Ross from Snout was on bass as well.
Yep.
One of my all-time music heroes, Ross McLennan.
And Timothy Nelson.
Timothy Nelson from WA came over and played the Billy Preston keyboard lines, and he was amazing.
Good on the harmony vocals.
Oh, my God. That was one of the best days I've ever had as a musician.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Trevor, who put the show together, emailed us quite a few months ahead and saying, guys, I want to do this filming thing for the Beatles rooftop anniversary, you know, to mark that milestone or whatever it is. And we all sort of thought, this sounds like fun. And we knew that it wasn't going to be a long set because it was a very short amount of songs. So we rehearsed it up I think the night before, and the day of the filming, we were in a heat wave. So it was like 36 degrees on the rooftop, no shade. There's a couple of umbrellas, I think, up there. And everything was live. We didn't repair anything. Like, we might have flown in maybe a line from another version, but we didn't tune anything. There was nothing overdubbed. It was. We did a couple of takes of things like what the Beatles did, but it was a beautiful day. Then it's at the end of the day, it poured rain. I went and had some food on my own at an Indian restaurant, which has since shut down. I sat there having this curry with my guitar case, just contemplating playing Beatles music all day in the blazing sun with my friends, being filmed. Being
a ginger in the sun.
Yeah. Mate, 50 plus was copping it that day. It was just magical.
It was incredible.
I'm glad you look on it favourably. I'm sure there's probably a few haters out there online who probably gave it a thumbs down. But from our perspective, I think it was great. We did it in the right spirit. You know, we're not a tribute band. We love that music so much that hopefully we injected the love into the playing of it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounded great. It looked great. And you could tell you guys did it with the best intentions, and I look forward to casting it to my big screen TV, probably tonight actually, because I haven't shown to Honey yet.
What time should I come over?
It sounded great. I'm like, why haven't I seen this before? And I think there was one thumbs down.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
There's always got to be one.
You've got to have a thumbs down. Just to keep it all
nice balance.
Yeah,
nice balance.
Look, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to tribute stuff like that. Like, I only say yes to these things because I usually love the artist being celebrated.
Mhm.
And, you know, if someone's going to pay me to go and play Zeppelin songs, of course I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The danger is that you have to be prepared enough to do them properly.
Yeah, you're the perfect one to do it.
Oh,
so.
mate. Well, unfortunately, I'll have to correct you there. Perfect.
Ideal?
Most
Suitable?
No.
Qualified?
Most reckless.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I'm the least qualified to do it. Zeppelin. That's a can of worms. When you do Zeppelin nights, it's like, oh my God, I thought I knew this song.
Mm.
It's only when you start learning those songs you think, oh my God, I don't know how to play this song properly.
It's magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were trying to play the Rain song just before.
I think between us we've got it covered, mate.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
In some form. Yeah, I'm a bit rusty. Rusty.
It's such an astonishing piece of music. But those Beatles songs, the rooftop sessions, like that, though, it's so primal. Like I played rhythm because I was playing all the John parts. I played lead on Get Back, obviously, because John played lead on Get Back.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is so bulletproof, you know. Like I just, that music to me is like a life source, you know.
Speaking of bullets, I read that Lemmy from Motorhead, his ashes were put into bullet casings and sent to his closest friends.
Wow, that's cool.
So, one of them being Ricky Rackman from, Headbangers Ball back in the day. Ricky said that Lemmy said before his death he asked for his ashes to be put in some bullets and handed out to his closest friends. So Ricky posted, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I received a bullet and was literally brought to tears. Thank you, Motorhead. It's got Lemmy engraved on the bullet.
Wow.
So I just thought that was an interesting thing to bring up with you on today's chat.
That's amazing.
It's one way to scatter your ashes, I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
So
how did we get onto bullets?
Can't remember. You said bullet there, or casings or something?
Yeah. That's pretty. That's a pretty epic send off, isn't it?
Would expect nothing less from someone like Lemmy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've got one final question for you.
All right, mate.
Did rock and roll, in fact, save your life?
It did.
Did?
And it does every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day it does. Yep. Obviously it changes week by week what it means to you. But look, for example, I talked about this on episode 1 of the Ashley Naylor Yak Fest. Hendrix, okay, like during the enforced layoff, I went on a Band of Gypsies bender and I listened to that sometimes at night when everyone had gone to bed. I had my headphones, I had an extension cable I bought from Manny's. Just listening to Band of Gypsies, every aspect of that. And Hendrix records that I've had since I was a teenager. Digging out records that I never gave full attention to when I was a kid, like listening to Electric Ladyland, listening to it with freedom because I didn't have to be anywhere. I didn't have a gig to get to.
Yeah.
I didn't have a song to write. I didn't have any agenda. My only motive was to listen to music, and listening to that, and that saves your life every time you press play, every time you put the needle on 1983, that track off Electric Ladyland. It's like, if anyone's curious about Hendrix, that's a great entry point. It's not an easy song as an entry point, but it's kind of probably like his Rain song for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it does. Short answer, rock and roll saves my life every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of, as it is for yourself. It's a life source. It's maybe a bit geeky or embarrassing to say, but it is what shapes you as a human being. Like, we all deal with life. Every aspect of our life, paying bills. Car rego, all that bullshit, making sure your petrol tank doesn't run low, making sure the rent's paid, all the mortgages paid, whatever. But in that realm of your life that you needs to be fulfilled, it's music for me. It's rock and roll. It almost defies categorization. You know. So, at the risk of sounding too philosophical, it saves my life every second.
And it's always there for you.
It is, man. Mm-hmm. It is. And
with you, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Ashley Naylor. Ashley Naylor.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you.
I really appreciate your time. I know we had some technical difficulties as
we had a pretty big technical difficulty in 2020, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Hopefully we're past that. And,
yeah.
I want to really thank you for your time and for your inspiration that you send out to the world.
Oh, mate. Well, likewise, thank you for inviting me to talk with you about music, because it's something that you and I share a deep passion for, and I hope and assume that it's the same for the people that listen to your show. So thanks for having me, mate.
Absolutely. I think we could do this all day, and we kind of have in a way, actually.
I think I can feel part 3 coming on.
Yeah. Well, best of luck with the church shows.
Thank you.
And I'll put a bunch of links in the show notes, everything relating to you.
Thank you.
And best of luck for the Even new album release and all the shows and everything for 2021. I wish you all the best.
Thanks, mate. Likewise. Yeah. I hope you're writing songs, at an alarming rate that'll surprise yourself.
All right. Thank you very much, Ash.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you again soon for another episode of Fox on the Wire.